Hi and welcome. In this video I'm going to be taking the push rods out of my Moto Guzzi Le Mans 1000. I noticed when I did the valve guides that there was an issue with one or two of them, but I didn't do anything about it at the time. But I thought during the lockdown, it gives me plenty of time to do some work on the bike. I thought I'd take the push rods out, show you what the problem is, and I've got a few thoughts on how I can repair the problem. I may have to replace them, but out here in Australia, the actual cost for push rods is close to $200 a piece. So I'd certainly like to save a little money and repair them safely if possible. Anyway, I'll take the push rods out, show you what the issue is, and show you what my thoughts are in how to repair them. First we'll remove the two spark plugs. Okay, now I'll just turn the engine over to top dead center on the firing stroke for the cylinder. That way both these valves will be closed and I'll be able to take the push rods out. So you can just look at the piston in here, see when it comes up to top dead center, and we can also keep an eye on these just to see whether... So both these valves are now closed. I feel a little bit of slack there, so now I can take those push rods out. Now we'll just take the rocker arms off, that way we can get the push rods out. Just take care not to lose any of the washers or springs in here when you take these off. Okay, here's the inlet push rod, and this one is fine. There's not a problem with this. Now the exhaust push rod, the top cap has come off, so that what happens when it's rotating, because as you know, the cam followers will actually have a convex surface on them, and the cam actually rotates the cam follower on a flat tappet engine round. So the push rods actually rotate during operation, and what has happened is that it's not rotating at the top or the bottom, is now rotating at this point here where the alloy meets this top cup, which means that it will be slowly putting small amounts of aluminium filings into the engine and causing wear at this point, which will affect the valve clearances. So what I'm going to attempt to do is actually Loctite this back in. I'm not sure if this will be successful. I'll know at the next service because I will check this push rod and see if this repair has held. As I said, the only other alternative is to replace the push rod, and that's quite an expensive option. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this Loctite 620 retaining compound. Now this is a high temperature retaining compound. This will work up to 200 degrees Celsius, which is quite high, and certainly this area shouldn't be at that temperature. But the first thing I will need to do is clean all the oil and grease off this push rod and this cup that sits on top here. So I'm actually going to be using acetone, and then I'll let it dry, and then I'll apply the Loctite before reassembling it into the engine. Now this Loctite does take a fair bit of time to cure. It's also a slow curing Loctite from what I've read from the data sheet. I'll put the time up for the cure on the screen if I can find it. So I'm going to leave this at least 24 hours before I reassemble it. Well, that was a little bit more difficult than I was expecting. Obviously the push rod is hollow, that makes sense. It's lighter that way. So I actually had to clean out a lot of oil that had made its way right down the full length of the push rod tube, and I did that by heating it up and using degreaser, and then finishing off with acetone and heating it up again and allowing it to dry vertical so that any fluid in there could drain out. I'll just let that dry completely, and then I can attempt the reassembly of it with the Loctite. Okay, everything is now clean and dry, so now we'll apply the Loctite. Put on that piece, some in here. Now with a rotating action, we'll just make sure we've got enough of it in there. And I'm just going to retain it with a bit of gaffer tape, because there is a bit of a build-up of air pressure in that tube from being hollow. It sort of acts like a piston in a barrel in there. So I'll just apply a bit of gaffer tape to hold that in place. And now we'll let that cure, and I'm going to let that cure for overnight. It should retain the majority of its strength in about 6 to 8 hours. It really does depend on ambient temperature, but should be fully cured in 24 hours, and then I'll reinstall it to the bike. Okay, it's been 24 hours, and that seems to have set quite nicely. I guess time will tell whether this is a good solution to this problem, or whether I'll just have to purchase another push rod. Okay, put it in. Now I've already loosened the adjuster here, just to make it easier to put it in. So there's one thrust washer here at the bottom. Put that into the push rod. Grab my pin. And now it would have been easier to take the tank off and put the pin through the top, because you've got the steel washer, the spring, and the bronze thrust washer at the bottom here, which goes in here, and it's actually rather hard to align it up from this direction, but being lazy, I've done it the other way. So So there'll be a bit of wrangling here to get this all in, I think. So now I just need to set the valve clearances. I already set the inlet, that's 0.2 of a mil, and this is 0.25. So I'll just get my feeler gauges out and set this to 0.25. And that's pretty good. All I need to do now is refit the cover and I'm done. Well, that's it. That's the left-hand side done. I've already done the right-hand side. I found all up 2 push rods needed repairing. Now I can't say from before I did the valve guides whether they were both inlet or exhaust or whether it was random, one was inlet and one was exhaust. I seem to remember that there was one on each side, but I can't recall which valve they were on. So whether this is a common problem with high mileage engines, I can't say. Whether this fix will work, again, only time will tell whether this particular Loctite is suitable for the job. I went to the Loctite website and I looked up the data sheets for this Loctite 620 and it seemed to be the appropriate Loctite. I mean, the temperature performance of these Loctites will vary depending on the metals as well as the environment that they're in and also the temperatures that they encounter. Over long periods of time, the strength of Loctites will decline slightly, so I guess time will tell whether this is going to be a successful fix for this problem. Anyway, I'll let you know in a few thousand kilometres time when I do the next oil change whether this has been a success. I'll catch you next time.